This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Oh my God!
Welcome, everybody, to the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 68. Oh, my God. It was a dumpster fire of Raw. It was a dumpster fire for SmackDown. We've got some news and notes. We're going to break it all down. The one who's saving me, and the reason that I'm here today, he is my Lord and Savior. You're my Jesus Christ. I don't know how I ended up right here. Oh, man. Honestly, guys, the reason that I showed up today to do this podcast is because of the guy sitting across the microphone from me. He is the one. He's the only. He's the John, Doc Macaroon. What's going on, Doc?
It's time for your moment of bliss with the DOC, baby. I'm not going to be silenced. I'm not going to be treated like EC3 where I come out here and don't say nothing. Holy cow, baby, I got a lot to say, and thank you very much. Yes, that's right. We record podcasts every single day, and I know that you're excited to talk about professional wrestling. We got a lot of things to say based on the bullshit that we saw with Raw and SmackDown, but I'm here. I'm ready to deliver. I got a lot of things to say.
So bad.
Man, I can't believe that
It's like that open I had. It was so bad.
I just think that sometimes wrestlers, maybe because they know that the big boss man has so much influence, that they're afraid to say no. Because if you're EC3 and you're a talker and one way to get over is to do promos, how do you accept being mute? How do you accept that as something that's presented to you and they go, you sit in a meeting and you sit in a pitch and you go, I'm EC3, how do I distinguish myself? Your entrance is great, your music is awesome.
Start there? Do you want to start there?
I want to start there. I think that it's atrocious because it signals what is wrong with wrestling right now in WWE is that the characters that are being presented don't match the guys that are, acting them out in any way possible. How is EC3 supposed to get over and make himself a marketable star by being mute? When having promos is one way to get over.
What's the one thing I told you
corny.
about EC3? When the reason I got excited about EC3, back when I would watch a ton of Impact, I would come in here and I would be like, dude, you got to check out this guy.
He's the total package.
This guy, Ethan Carter III. He's amazing. He's got the look. He's got the mic skills. I'd be like, John, you have to check him out. If you get a moment of your day, you have 5 minutes. You need to check this guy out. He's incredible on the mic. He's got an incredible body. He's going to be the next superstar. He's awesome. And now watch the way WWE books him. Watch the way they book him.
Craziness.
But let's not give a guy who is highly marketable, a guy who has a body of a Greek god, right? Let's not give him any type of TV time. And if we do give him TV time, let's book him like he's mute, because that makes sense. EC3 is your next John Cena. Whether you like or you hate John Cena, he's your next John Cena.
See, here's the problem WWE is having. Yes, they are going back to the past, but they're going back to stuff that we've already seen. It's predictable. They've gone back to a traditional entrance that we've seen in the past. Obviously, when we talk about Becky Lynch and Stephanie, that's just a la cut and paste from 20 years ago when it was Stone Cold versus Vince McMahon. It's the authority versus the person that's over. And you saw it on SmackDown when Becky Lynch confronted Triple H. It's not new. So when the opening segment happens with Stephanie McMahon and Becky Lynch, I go to Andrea and I turn to her and I say, man, they're doing this the same exact way that they treated Stone Cold. And it's great. It's fine, but it's not new. It's not innovative. It's a woman that got over in Becky Lynch. It's a character that's new in EC3 that has a pitch that's terrible. This is a spot that you realize, obviously, Owen Hart had a gimmick that was terrible in the Blue Blazer. And you have gimmicks.
Brutal.
Yeah, you have bad gimmicks. And guys eventually realize it's bad, and then their real character comes out. Because you got to remember, Stone Cold Steve Austin wasn't that. He was stunning Steve Austin with the blonde hair, and he was kind of like a muscle guy, but he wasn't Stone Cold. So a guy like EC3 shouldn't accept this. I mean, you should learn from history. that sometimes you're going to be given characters that are terrible. And I don't know if it's a test sometimes to see if you could actually get it over, but for EC3, it's terrible. And all I could think about during this week's programming of WWE was more of the same. It's not interesting. And I was really let down by Raw. I turned it off intermittently, and I was just disappointed. Like I said, nothing on Raw really captured my attention other than maybe thinking Kurt Angle was going to retire. I thought that would have been cool, but did he retire? No, more matches. And like I said, how when you're trying to get people over, like a guy like Apollo Crews, precious TV time, you give it to Jeff Jarrett, the guy's time is over. You don't need to see him in the ring. The one time we saw him last year was cool. Okay, last week's Raw, he got into it a little bit. It was a good little break with Elias, but to see him in the ring at 51, come on. That should be something that's done as a backstage thing or on main event, not on your flagship show. And I sent you something earlier today regarding what Fox is looking at, and they're talking like how we are, that if you don't deliver, we're not going to put SmackDown on the big show. And I'm worried about that because what's going on in WWE right now with their programming isn't making me thrilled to watch it.
Delve into that. Go with it. Because you sent me something earlier today talking about how if this is the type of programming that Fox is signing up for, there's going to be no SmackDown on Fox.
Yeah, they'll put it on FS1. They'll put it on a lesser channel if the ratings don't improve. And they're right, because if right now SmackDown has AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan and superstars, Randy Orton, that are staples that wrestling fans know, and they're not drawing ratings, how are they going to put that on Fox? They can't, and it will be relegated. And I think a lot of people are like, yeah, it should. If the programming is not done right, then you have to move it. And I think that WWE is on the verge of potentially, because when you look at the reviews of these shows on Raw or SmackDown, you start to see what people are thinking, and a lot of people aren't happy. They just go, what is this? This is not, it doesn't make any sense. When you see Jeff Jarrett on your television, it's great, but when you see him wrestle, come on now. It doesn't make for a show that people want to see. And I just think that at this point in time, the way these shows are put together is making a lot of people go, well, let me check out AEW. Let me check out what's going on with New Japan. Let me check out other shows. Let me just turn on the network and put on some of these specials or put on NXT. Let me sit back and rewatch Halftime Heat. That was an amazing match. It just goes to show you that I think a lot of people are turning off Raw for other entities because of the fact that Monday Night Raw is not the same, and it's diluted, and it's not great. It's not good content. A lot of times you walk away from a show like that and you go, why? Stuff doesn't make sense. You have cheap field DQs to end your shows, and you have situations in which on SmackDown at least, you have a heel, then turns into a face too quickly, then back to a heel, and it's like, a lot of things could be done better, and you expect better when you have that much production value. You have that many writers. I just can't, and it's highlighted by the fact now that, you know what? People thought right away that Dean Ambrose was going to start losing. And what happens? He starts losing. Yeah. I think it's an unfair way to book Dean Ambrose, is to have him put over EC3. I think you could have done it maybe with somebody else, maybe like an Apollo Crews or somebody else you want to bury.
I don't think it's unfair for Dean Ambrose to put over EC3. Look,
no?
Dean Ambrose has one foot out the door. He's leaving. All right.
But do you disrespect him by a guy that came back from an injury, a guy that's had the biggest angles in the company?
I don't think it's disrespectful to have him.
Is that best for business for wrestlers to get buried on their way out? Because you do hurt their value a little bit with fans.
I think if you get buried on your way out, yes. But
that's what they should do?
But you have to look at what's going on here, right? Dean Ambrose is leaving. EC3 is supposed to be that next guy. So this moment in time, what we're talking about, where you have a wrestler leaving and you have a wrestler that's supposed to be ascending, it only makes sense for Dean Ambrose to put over EC3. All of that being said, there are times where WWE does this, where you have a superstar on their way out the door and they book them into oblivion because they want to hurt them when they get to the open market. And you're right, that's poor. This case I think was a culmination of absolute crap. You put EC3 in a spot where he wasn't going to win. You had Dean Ambrose in a spot where he wasn't going to win. And you know what? It was like, guys, go make the best out of it. And what'd they give you? I don't want to say it was shit, but it was pretty damn close. And you mix in Nia Jax. Nobody needs to see this. It was a bad segment. that was even more awkward because Alexa Bliss is in there trying to interview EC3 and he's not talking.
A mute EC3.
Right.
Wow.
And look, EC3, one of the best things EC3 brings to the table is the guy can talk. You give the guy a microphone, he will spin you a story. And it will be silky, it will be smooth, and it's going to capture you. It's going to rapture you. And you're going to want to hear what this man has to say. Now, if you've seen EC3 the last couple weeks on WWE Programming, you have no idea. You're like, who is this guy that Adam's talking about? Who is this guy that Jock is speaking poetry about? Who is this EC3 character? Because you haven't heard him. Because WWE hasn't taken the tape off of his mouth so he can go out there and he can spit it and he can spin it because that's what the guy does. But you don't know. And that's on WWE. This is all on WWE. You know? I mean, some of the highlights from this week's Raw was Becky Lynch.
Yeah.
We like she opened Raw and we haven't even delved into her getting suspended by Stephanie McMahon for refusing medical attention because she's working through a legitimate injury in her left knee. And they have taken this injury and they have turned it into kayfabe, which is fine. It's fine. But your number one star is working through a legitimate injury, and that's why she hasn't been on live events. That's why she hasn't put on the quality of matches that you expect. And you're going to pull her off television, and you're going to book her into oblivion because that's what you do as WWE. That's why you have an event coming up at WrestleMania where you've got the hottest thing on the earth in Becky Lynch. She is the hottest thing in wrestling. And you've got Ronda Rousey, who is a draw. Anywhere you put Ronda Rousey, you could put Ronda Rousey in the studio, a draw. You could take Ronda Rousey, put her in Saudi Arabia. She's going to be a draw. I know women aren't supposed to be there and aren't supposed to be a draw. She's going to be a draw, bro. Let me tell you, she's going to be a draw. You could put her in an empty old ECW arena. And that place used to get packed, but now they have a hard time selling. Gonna be a draw.
This week on Raw, do you feel like Ronda was used well with the matches she had back-to-back? I think that she was kind of trying to highlight herself and her acumen in the ring, and then at the same time backstage when Becky was being escorted out, she approaches Becky. I felt like it was good. She did a good job, but at the same time, I feel like, you know what? Ronda doesn't have to have matches right now. She can just be all about Becky Lynch, all about interfering in her life. I think that Ronda should have attacked Becky. A cheap shot. Why not start some physicality?
Because they don't know what they're doing with Ronda. They don't know if she's going to be a heel. Is she going to be a face? I think her backstage segment after Becky was suspended for attacking Stephanie McMahon for refusing to get the medical attention on her knee, I think the backstage segment was good enough. And I'm going to leave it at good.
Just enough.
Enough. Because you need Ronda to be a killer. Ronda's got to be your killer. You know, she dismantled 2/3 of what, the Riot Squad? Is that who she beat up?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? She beat up 2/3 of them. You need her to be a killer. You know, I don't need her to talk. I don't need her with a microphone in front of her face. I don't need her to tell me about how mad and how upset she is. Okay, cool. I know. Just go to the ring, do it. Just go ahead and do it for me. Like, there were very few highlights this week on Monday Night Raw. It was put together so poorly. And Becky Lynch was one of those highlights. Becky Lynch beating up Stephanie was a highlight. And you're right. What went on in the back was okay. But did you really care about Becky Lynch beating up anybody? You really didn't. It was just kind of a blip on a radar. You didn't care. You know, you kind of cared when EC3 came out because you're like, oh, shoot, here's a new guy. They're finally going to give him his due. And then that was bad. And Nia Jax comes out, and that's even worse. And then EC3 gets a win over Dean Ambrose. And you're like, all right, well, whatever. That's kind of what it is.
I think the highlight for me was just seeing the Revival get a victory. I thought it was a good tag team match. But where's the B team? Where's the B team been?
For real?
I liked it. I liked the Revival. I like that match. Yeah,
the Revival.
That's it. That was the only highlight for me.
All right. Okay. I mean, Who am I going to tell you you're wrong?
What was your favorite part other than Becky Lynch?
Becky Lynch and EC3.
That was it, right?
That was it. But the Revival getting a win was not much of a highlight. There was no highlights this week.
Right.
I mean, Kurt Angle comes out and cuts a bad promo about how he's going to retire. Just drug this on forever. Baron Corbin and Drew McIntyre come out. He's saved by Braun. When this is all said and done, this is our main event, which wasn't very good. You know what I'm saying? There was nothing this week on Monday Night Raw that was worth a damn. Absolutely nothing. Monday Night Raw was arduous to get through, and it was a chore to get through. Raw was not good. SmackDown, not really sure if it was much better. SmackDown wasn't really any good either. I mean, you have Charlotte in the ring. She's taunting Becky, right? Because we've got two brands. We have a brand split, but doesn't matter if they cross over. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Anyways, Becky Lynch is in the ring being taunted by Charlotte. Triple H comes down, sends Charlotte to the back. That was probably the best spot of the whole thing on SmackDown, was Triple H getting involved in sending Charlotte away. Do you know what I'm saying? And then this leads to Becky Lynch and Charlotte going back and forth with each other. And Becky Lynch is going to ask Triple H, and so ballsy, oh, hey, how's Stephanie doing? This leads to a little bit where Triple H claims that Becky's scared. She's scared. The man is scared. And you know the man doesn't handle that. She slapped the shit out of him, bro. Slapped it. This was great. The crowd erupted. This was a good spot on an otherwise bad program. It really was.
Yeah.
It really was. In the end, Becky goes to the back. I thought this was a good spot. The problem is they are trying to cram Charlotte into this match, and it's so obvious what they're trying to do that it's frustrating, especially as a fan. You're frustrated because nobody wants to see Charlotte somehow shoehorned into this match with Ronda Rousey. Nobody wants to see that shit. Nobody. You don't want to see it. I don't want to see it.
Do you like the way WWE has been promoting and utilizing Mustafa Ali? I think there's something there in terms of the skill set that he has. He's unique, and he's been put in some great matches with Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton. He's obviously going to be an integral figure as well going forward. I think he's involved in the Elimination Chamber. So I think that he's got, a push behind him, and I think he's capitalizing. I like the way they've utilized Mustafa Ali. I think it's an opportunity for him to take advantage of a push. I think he's been respected, obviously, when you go from 205 Live to the main roster. I've been impressed with Mustafa Ali. I think he brings it, and I think you and I both noticed it at WrestleMania when he came out with that amazing outfit that he had. I'm like, dude, this Mustafa Ali is an interesting cat. He's interesting.
You called it last year. Mm-hmm. And you said, this guy, Mustafa Ali,
there's something to him.
There's something about him. You called it. You were ahead of the curve. I love the way they're building him. Mm-hmm. I think this is a guy who they're getting right. I think this is a guy who he has all the tools. He has all the tools to the trade, and they're getting it right the way they're building him. Him and Randy Orton had a very entertaining match. It was very entertaining, and Randy Orton RKO'd him out of nowhere. It's the right build. Your guy doesn't have to always win as long as it's the right build. This is the right build. You're going to go have Mustafa Ali be in the Elimination Chamber, and he's going to get all of his work in.
Yes.
I'm so...
He might get a moment in that chamber.
Exactly. I am so ready to see what he does when he's in there. And it's because of this. It's because of him and Randy Orton going back and forth. Him and Samoa Joe going back and forth. It's because they're building him the right way. He doesn't have to win every single match. Your favorite guy doesn't need to win every single match because it's all about the journey. It's all about your guy getting there. So when he finally gets to his spot, he has the ability to take that and run with it. And I love the way that they are building Mustafa Ali. At some point, you've got to pay it off. You have to pay it off at some point. But for right now, I love what they're doing. I love how it's building. I love the fact that they're working Samoa Joe into all of this. I love how they are building Mustafa Ali. And speaking of Mustafa Ali, speaking of Samoa Joe, speaking of the Elimination Chamber, in our main event, we had Jeff Hardy challenging Daniel Bryan. Now, this was a good match. This was back and forth. Nobody was really able to get one leg up on the other. In the end, all hell breaks loose in the main event because this is what WWE does with multi-man matches. You have a main event between two guys who are going to be competing in this multi-man match, and then you've got to somehow get all 6 or 8 or 12 or 15 guys out there, and you have to break something. Eric Rowan ends up choke slamming Mustafa Ali through a table. Samoa Joe comes out, slabs Daniel Bryan in the coquina clutch. AJ Styles is standing tall when all this is said and done. When it's all said and done. This is how WWE books their multi-man matches. I wasn't really impressed with it, but I get it. You know, overall, I thought SmackDown was better than Raw.
But doesn't say much.
But yeah, I thought Raw was abysmal.
Raw and SmackDown weren't as good as Halftime Heat. The match that they put on was amazing. Those 6 guys deserve credit. They were engaging. It was awesome. Brings back memories of 20 years ago when The Rock and Mick Foley were involved in it. And I just think that they should continue to do it. I think it was great. I think NXT from the Performance Center had a great opportunity to capture the spotlight. And no match, I don't know if it hits for you, the match of the week, but I thought Halftime Heat was cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Halftime Heat. Go watch it. It's only 20 minutes.
Halftime Heat was great.
I didn't have to witness Maroon 5 and their nonsense. I just watched Halftime Heat, and that was good. I was like, oh, I got my fix. This is great.
I totally watched Maroon 5 and their nonsense. It was horrible. I really wish I would have, for the Super Bowl, I really wish I would have watched Halftime Heat.
It's good. Go check it out.
It was incredible.
Very incredible.
It was amazing, guys. Go watch that. We both are in agreement.
SmackDown
wins because Raw was awful.
And before you get to news and notes, the crew of All Elite Wrestling took in the Super Bowl. So good for them, enjoying the limelight a little bit, doing some great stuff. And they're doing some signings and things like that. So interesting stuff. And, people are continuing the buzz regarding All Elite Wrestling. And there'll be some information. And there'll be some information that you also pass along regarding how WWE has responded. So hit me with this week's pro wrestling news and notes. I'm excited.
Yeah. So Hideo Itami was released last week. He's going to be headed back to Japan. WWE said, yeah, go ahead. We're good. You can go back. No big deal. It's being reported that AJ Styles will be staying with WWE. It sounds like he's going to get a fat raise. He's going to have less dates that he has to tour. He's basically getting the contract that he wants, and he gets to stay with WWE. Now, however, some speculation, AEW could make a run at Shinsuke Nakamura. Now, Nakamura's contract is coming up at the same time as AJ Styles. While AJ Styles stays, Nakamura could go over to AEW. Now, AEW making some noise. There are a lot of guys in WWE that they want to make a run at, but there are other guys that they want to make a run at. The Young Bucks showed up at an event this week where the Lucha Brothers, if you're not sure who the Lucha Brothers are, that would be Pentagon and that would be Phoenix, were wrestling. And Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix are two guys who you might be familiar with if you watched any of the of Lucha Underground, or if you've watched any Impact recently. They're generally two monster stars on both those programs. Young Bucks recently showed up at an event, and they kind of had a little bit of a stare down with Pentagon and Phoenix, and offered them a contract. So it seems that Pentagon and Phoenix will be joining AEW. Multiple reports that yes, multiple reports that we're not really sure what's going on. But I'm going to go out there. I'm going to say, yeah, those two dudes. I'm going to say it right now. Those two dudes are going to AEW. So that's a huge coup for AEW. It's a huge coup for the Young Bucks. There is also a report going around that last Tuesday, not this Tuesday, but last Tuesday, WWE was very concerned with talent leaving. So they cornered a ton of talent at the end of SmackDown, brought them in rooms, and essentially offered them contracts. And these contracts weren't small. They said, we will double whatever your current contract is. You need to sign now, though. We're going to lock you up for the next 5 years. A 5-year contract at double what you're currently making to prevent you from going to AEW. This was a whole bunch of guys whose contracts were coming up very, very soon. WWE is also planning to go back to Saudi Arabia on May 3rd for their next big Middle East event. And the Universal Championship #1 contender, Seth Rollins, is reportedly nursing a back injury. You notice how he wasn't wrestling this week on Monday Night Raw. Don't expect him to wrestle the next month on Monday Night Raw. He needs some time away. He's trying to heal a sore back. And that's your news and notes.
I have one additional piece that I did just come across. A wrestling entity did put out that AJ Styles inked his deal, but AJ Styles responded and said, that sounds like news to me, and they're standing behind it. So people are saying, well, potentially that he got everything he wanted, but it's interesting that wrestlers do respond to these news outlets, and the entity stood by and said, hey, we believe in our story. It's going to come to fruition, so it's going to be interesting to see. But I do think AJ Styles, when you look at it, why wouldn't you give him less dates and why wouldn't you keep him? Because right now, if you lose AJ Styles, Nakamura, The Revival, Dean Ambrose to AEW, you're talking about a serious problem. That's a serious hit to your talent base right there.
I'm assuming that AJ Styles has signed his deal as well.
You believe it? Yeah.
I do. But I know which news organization you're discussing. I know what you're talking about. I can't find anything else
to corroborate that.
Yeah, I only have the one report. And I didn't want to say yes based on one report. I need to find somebody else to say yes as well. But I do believe he signed his deal with WWE as well.
And if you're somebody that peeks around social media, Undertaker has removed WWE from all his social media platforms. So what does that say? Has he retired? It doesn't. He's not going to
AEW. Don't worry, he's not going to AEW.
He's not going to AEW, right?
No, he's retired. That's what that is. He probably, you know what? I think at some point you'll see WWE move him to the what is it, the Legends part of their website or the alumni part of their website. Don't be surprised though if he gets another deal or two or he gets another match or two. I wouldn't be surprised if he is inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame this year and he does something special for WrestleMania 35.
Now, if you're somebody that has the network, Doc recommends you definitely check out the WWE 24 in regards to and recapping WrestleMania that took place in New Orleans. It was a great hour. I sat and I watched it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It had behind the scenes. It had the scene where Brock Lesnar threw the belt at Vince McMahon. It's shocking because you don't typically see Vince McMahon getting angry and calling someone an asshole. And he's like, he comes through the curtain, he's red-faced, and Brock Lesnar takes the belt and kind of chucks it. They don't show the argument, but you go, somebody goes, asshole. And I think it was Vince, but he kind of storms through. He doesn't seem to be happy. And I like more of that. I was telling Andrea, I kind of like it when the scenes are after WrestleMania, they come through the curtain and everybody kind of goes to Vince to see his approval.
Yeah.
And one of the powerful scenes last year was Kevin Owens came back and Vince wasn't happy. And he came back and he looked and he was like, no, wasn't good. And so for me, I like those moments when you get a chance to see the behind the scenes. And I like to see more of Vince McMahon's disapproval. I want to see Vince going, dude, I told you to do this spot. You didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? So I want to see more of that. And I think that they're hesitant, but I think there's value in that and kind of seeing when these guys come back and Vince gives them the critique. Let us see what Vince says to him. How is that going to hurt us? I think it would be magical to see, because they did show Kevin Owens last year. He walked through the curtains and we talked about it. He walked back and Vince was like, and Kevin said that it shook me, that I felt like I was like rocked to the core. Was I going to lose my job?
It's like letting your dad down.
Exactly. I want to see more of that. That would have been cool. You didn't see the face-to-face argument. You just saw Brock getting pissed.
The all access part
great.
of WWE with the network is
he's the boss. Show it.
That is
That's
the
last
best part.
piece. Yeah, it's the best part. They should show Vince his disapproval. And actually, you know what? When you look at it, I think if you want to create some more content, go right to the source.
That's it.
Vince.
That's it. Yeah.
Let us in, Vince, a little bit more. Like, this is what I want to see. This is what I believe
Vince's
in.
office where he's got his gigantic T-Rex head.
Yeah.
And show us the negotiation. Show us what goes on.
Show us your thought about this gimmick, because he did show in that special him kind of coaching up Rhonda, like take in the entrance, stand there, do stuff. He did coach her up, and it was cool to see. Mm-hmm. One of the few moments you get to see, I think. I know he doesn't want to reveal it too much, but a little bit, maybe with the likes of an Ali, with somebody else.
This is the thing about wrestling, because wrestling it's all theater, right?
Yeah.
And you're supposed to believe that guys are out there and they really want to kill each other, even though 2 minutes ago they're in the same locker room, they're throwing it out.
Yeah. But there's one big puppet master, and his name is Vince McMahon.
Right.
We want to see what's his thinking, because I think that would lend to us maybe being a little bit less critical if maybe he's thinking along the lines of an old school wrestler mixed with something new that maybe is why he wants Daniel Bryan to be this hemp master.
The thing is the hemp master. The thing is there is a line that you have to walk though, because you can't show
everything.
too much. Yeah,
right.
Because then it takes away the allure, the gusto, like the whole mirage of why we watch wrestling. And on top of that, Vince has his own
persona.
Yes, exactly. Persona is the perfect word. He has his own persona, so you can't break that down too much, because if you do, it takes away that luster from all of it. But no, you're spot on, man. I love it.
Great podcast. Episode 68 comes to a close. You can follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. If you're watching any wrestling event and you want to comment, feel free at Detroit Podcast. Feel free. Message us. Let us know your thoughts live as you're watching Raw, SmackDown, NXT. We love it. Thanks to our supporters who download each and every week. We greatly appreciate your support. We'll be back next week with episode 69, baby. Nice.
Yeah, guys, this week was trying in wrestling for sure. And I think you kind of got that with this podcast. So sorry about that, but they got to start
better, WWE.
Yeah, they got to start putting better stuff out there. It's brutal. I can't wait for AEW to come on the map. And oh, by the way, I totally forgot, and I don't know why I didn't have it on the news and notes segment. AEW, again, fielding multiple reports for television. They have knocked it down to two massive deals. According to Dave Meltzer, this deal will be the biggest deal that is a non-WWE deal. This is going to sound so complicated.
Biggest money spent on programming for a non-WWE entity.
Exactly.
Big money, baby.
This will rival whatever like WCW got years ago.
Into the big time, baby, and that's why you're seeing some big contracts being offered.
Mm-hmm.
Also, support those who support us. Support the Breaking Down the Ring podcast. Mikey and the crew are the most inappropriate wrestling podcast. Follow them at BDRcast. They air live every Wednesday, 9:15 on the Podcast Detroit platform. And as always, support Dennis Farrell and the Wrestling Perspective podcast. We're featured on his network, and he's featured on ours. He's a great guy, does great things. His show is syndicated nationally on Friday nights. Check out Dennis Farrell on Twitter at Dennis77Farrell, the godfather of wrestling, baby.
By the way, he's got a great question out there right now. I guess P.D. Williams is quite upset that WWE has renamed the Canadian Destroyer, which is P.D. Williams' move that he invented. So he's got a great question out there on Twitter. Go check it out. Was it at Dennis77Farrell? Wants to know if you'd be upset if you invented something and somebody else came along and changed the name of it. So you can go vote and let Dennis know on Twitter there. Great question. Great question. The Canadian Destroyer is a great move, by the way.
See everybody next week. Support P.D. Williams, man. We don't like gimmick infringement. That sucks.
Yeah, but we can all kinds of stuff.